Heroin? All right.
Welcome back, my friend. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends.
Welcome to the show that never ends. Sexual Healing Podcast. Conversations will address concerns and celebrations within the misunderstood and misinformed world of sexual being. Your hosts, Dr. Bill, Mac, and Pipes, bring insight from different sexual health perspectives, covering 70 years of experience.
Oh, very nice.
And we are back. Thank you very much, my production crew. Hi. We've got Mac and Pipes back. Mac was gone last week. You looked great. The bandages are off. I am so pleased. I bet you're very happy that you had to pay cash for that, but it was whatever they did in Mexico was worth it. You're looking good. We talked last week about a lot of cool things, and we were asked by our listening public. What's plural for public? Publics? So we had public. We had one public say, let's talk about sex education. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I've got my production crew, Shelby, Jose at the electrical board. And because of the discussion point, and Shelby is really very up on this, she's been involved in sex education concerns at the school district in California at all different levels. And most of you out there are listening not from the Americas. They're there. You guys are listening in Europe. But let me tell you what's going on in the United States. Sex education, when it's introduced to our kids, at what age, whether private or public schools, and who should really be in charge of that content is a very, very hot issue. It's a big issue. People have been threatened. We've been threatened. We have concerns about security. So, as you know, Cody does run our security program here to make sure we're safe in the studios. We have doubled our security team. Tucker is added tonight, and he'll be patrolling along with Tucker. So, just a word to the wise, do not fuck with us. Listen, enjoy, make sure that you hear something that is interesting, because we're going to talk about sex education. And I know that I had a very difficult time in my own sex education. It's interesting, it's kind of ironic that I'm doing what I'm doing now 50 years later. But when I was in school and was forced to have sex education classes, I flunked 3 times. I had a major problem with the oral exam. And finally got through that, and now I'm understanding a little bit what's going on, and we're here to facilitate a discussion. Mac and Pipes, tell me your read. What do you believe you missed or wanted to know that was never taught to you in your sex education class that, looking back as adults with their own children, you would have liked to have been made aware of?
I don't know if I can answer that question directly. It's such a long time ago, what I should have been taught and what I should have not have been taught. But what I know today is I think there's a lot of discussions on sexual gender, sexual identity, sexual this, sexual that. And I think we need to bring it together. I think it needs to come into the schools. I don't know if our teachers need to teach it. I think maybe bring in a professional to teach it, or a guest host or something. I think the teacher could be challenged by her students, later on when they move to a history lesson or some other lesson, unless they're advanced schools where they rotate classes. But I don't know, but I feel sex education is important, and I kind of equate it to driver's education, if you will. We all took driver's ed, and what we learned in driver's ed: responsibility, the rule of the roads, and knowing that if we don't adhere to that, there could be major trouble out there on the roads. And I think the same. I think studies show that once you teach somebody about sexual education, what's the difference between sex, sexuality, they have a better understanding. They appreciate it more. They respect it more. It's a different mindset. So if you're asking if I favor it, I absolutely do favor sexual education in schools. I also favor parent participation as well, like in any education.
I
I think
go ahead.
I think, we talk about parent involvement should be at all levels, not just sex education, not just ABCs, everything. And that's just my personal take.
I
So I find it.
I find it fascinating that you're equating sex education and driver's education. And again, that's where I screwed up growing up. I apparently went to a very backward school because I was hoping to take driver's ed and sex education at the same time, but we were limited on classrooms. We only had one car to teach both classes. So
Did it have a tilt steering wheel?
had
or
a tilt
headroom?
steering wheel and a headroom and a back seat.
It
So
was a station wagon.
here,
Of the Nash.
pipes, yeah. Okay, pipes. So, who should be involved in sex education? We've all shared articles over the last week, including our production staff, and it seems like we need to have someone who knows what the hell's going on. Teachers do a great job, depending upon what grade they're teaching or what classes they're teaching. They're not the experts in sex. They're certainly not the experts in anatomy, and they're certainly not the experts in psychology, as Pipes keeps telling us day in and day out through all these damn podcasts that she's the psychologist of record. But so who's equipped? Who should be running these classes, Pipes?
You know what? I think that there's
Dr.
great
Pipes, excuse me.
What?
Dr. Pipes.
Dr. Pipes.
You and Biden.
Heavy on the doctor.
Yeah.
I should have been a sex therapist. That actually would have been a great path for me, but I digress. You know what? I think that there are a lot of people that can be experts in different capacities. Obviously, there are groups that are very focused on this, getting into the education system, all of that. And I think that there needs to be different levels. I'm with Mac. I can't remember what the hell happened during my sexual education classes when they were like none of that. And my parents were really not great communicators about things like that. So, kids have a tendency to learn a whole lot more on their own versus having, the right information in the right direction. But I think that learning about puberty and cleanliness and all of the things that kind of go with the young changes with kids versus the more sexual aspect of it. Then you're talking STDs and you're talking, your body images and all of these other things. So you have to have different conversations at different times in everyone's life. And I mean, I'm a big advocate for not doing the hoo-ha, having all the little names necessarily for body parts. I was very matter of fact with my children. We definitely went down the penis vagina path. And I remember, oh my gosh, I wish I could remember exactly how old the kids were, but I have two nephews that the kids are 4 years apart. So, each of them in 4 years are, a year apart. I guess it makes more sense. So I remember giving the kids a bath one day and my nephew saying, how come Kinsey doesn't have a penis? Well, I don't know if he said penis. So I, at that stage of the game, and they were young, obviously young enough to like give them baths together, like 14, 15.
I feel a little dirty right now.
I couldn't help it. Okay, but very young, and so I just sat in the bathroom and had this whole conversation with these four little kids and explained, that girls have vaginas and boys have penises and that's the difference and da 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 da. I mean, I didn't go into great detail, but I was very matter of fact with them. And I remember walking out of there and then explaining to my brother and sister-in-law that I had just explained all of that to their children. Maybe not my place. They were very thankful because not a comfort level for them to have those kind of conversations. And so I've just always been pretty open with my kids about things. I don't always give advice like to random, children that came over for, slumber parties and stuff. But I was very matter of fact. And being in the business that we are all in, and being very focused on sexual health and all of that, and kids being very curious about what I did, so I think my kids may have been on a different level, probably the same as your guys' kids as well, just because of our background and our comfort level in talking about, sexual health or even sexual dysfunction. I'm pretty sure my kids know more about erectile dysfunction than most young 20-year-old girls.
When you say your kids, you would go down the vagina path and the penis path. Now, I live about 2 hours away from a national park, and we used to go out hiking all the time. I have never seen those paths. So you're in a different part of the country, but how did you actually just said the path and they have a little map and talk, and they were they were receptive of that?
Very receptive.
Good.
I think everybody has their whole little, my hoo-ha, what do boys call their little things? I don't have
their junk, their power, their Johnson.
Their John. I mean, everybody has like
yo, you know what I'm saying?
40-year-old walking up.
But yeah, Trish brings a very good point. We talk about parental involvement at all levels, and Trish could take it upon herself, say, hey, every year we're going to have a sex education discussion, but that's where the teachers need to be involved. They have the kids, not teachers. I think an outside source has to be involved in it. The articles we reviewed this week, I think Planned Parenthood on their website is a great discussion about sexual education. But I don't think it only takes one. We always talk about, as we're raising kids, it takes a village, and it takes a village with sexual education as well. It just can't be one person's opinion. It has to be involved with everybody, because kids are going to have questions. An interesting question. My wife works with 911 and emergency services dispatching. I've shared this with you before, and she says a lot of times she gets calls from men and are describing their female partner that is in discomfort and is holding her stomach and bent over stuff, and they ask a series of questions to try to get to the point. And if they can the woman talk, and the woman gets on and says, yeah, I'm having the worst menstrual cramps. And my wife says, if the guys would just say, my wife's having menstrual pain, it would cut 5 minutes out of the conversation. But some guys just aren't comfortable talking about a woman's menstrual cycle. And that's where I think education comes. It can help everybody if we just quit being so taboo about it.
Well, you bring up, both of you bring up great points. When I was growing up, sex education, I don't know if they still do that, but they separated genders, boys and girls. Now it's very confusing when we talk about different pronouns and different genders. And we also know that there's a disconnect or a significant separation in the level of maturity that boys and girls have growing up. When my son was, I think, in 4th grade, he said that his friend, who was a desk mate, her name was Mary Macbeth Magdalene or something. He went to Hebrew school. And he goes, what? She said she just got her dot and told me. And he says, Dad, what's a dot? You're a doctor. Tell me what a dot is. I go, dot? He says, well, what do you mean? Oh, not dot, Dad. I'm sorry, period. Had her period. All right, so he had no clue what was going on. This is a true story.
Yeah, it's real. It happens.
Yeah. And then you look at my lawyer, who is 62? I think Mark's 62. He's been listening to our podcasts and sexual healing podcasts on Spotify. He's listening on TikTok, and he's also listening to Just the Tip America on Spotify as well. And he says, great talks. I love what you guys are talking about, but I think we ought to you guys ought to take a different turn. And so I asked him, what do you need? He says, I think you guys need more dick jokes. So that's my lawyer. All right. That's the guy that's preventing me from, getting in trouble every day. And so you got my son on one hand who doesn't know a dot from a period, and my lawyer who wants more dick jokes. So where do we find the happy medium in education when we can handle both genders, get someone who speaks with authority? identifies a crowd and understands the crowd where they can speak and educate in a comfortable way. That's the challenge. So I don't see my son in fourth grade understanding different pronoun issues. And quite honestly, I don't see my lawyer also understanding that. So where do we, how do we, that's a huge challenge for us when we're talking about much more than Dick and Jane, the vagina path and the penis path. It's much more involved. And even the articles that you guys shared with me regarding a high school student who is well educated, quite adept at speaking and communicating. Intruder, find the intruder. It wants to bring in gender dysphoric issues in a younger age. How does that work? I just don't get it.
Great question.
Yeah, I think it all depends on when the kids are asking the question. Like, I remember very specifically the day that Kinsey asked me, like, what sex was, and used, that verbiage, sex. And so now and they were pretty young, both the girls, and they were both sitting there wanting this answer. And I'm in this mad scramble trying to figure out, like, how to respond to that and how age appropriate my response needed to be, because they were young, but they asked the question and they needed an answer. And I was going to be honest about how that works. And I think it's when the kids are asking the questions, we need to answer them. And we need to figure out a comfortable way as parents to do that. And then maybe that's when, if the parent isn't comfortable, going into the school and talking to the teachers or the health teachers or whomever it is that are teaching these classes, and ask how that conversation needs to go if you're not comfortable with it personally. I didn't have a problem discussing it with my kids, but I know there's a lot of people who don't.
I don't have young kids or grandchildren. Do we have that option in schools now, Mac? Can we control what the discussion is in schools?
I think we can have a voice. I don't know if we can control it, but we can have a voice. But I think we have to listen to our kids. When kids ask about sex, like Pipes' experience and stuff, we have to be able to articulate what it is. And something Pipe said earlier was, when they ask, we've got to educate them, because they'll go try to find the answer somewhere. And that path is going to take them to some illicit websites or whatever, some misinformation. They're going to be all confused. We need to clean it up. And they'll go to porn. And we already know how porn could poorly affect somebody's sexual health. We know that. It's well documented. So we got to prevent that. Now, we got people talking out of both sides of their mouth. We have I'm not going to give anybody a label here. We have people saying, I don't want sex taught in schools and I want to ban pornography. Well, if you don't teach sex, they're going to find pornography. So you've got to say, look, we've got to find a happy medium there, and we've got to educate correctly. Just like we teach different levels of math, whether it's math, algebra, trigonometry, whatever, different levels of history, American history or European history, it all has a place. And one thing we've got to stop is this taboo about sex. Sex has to be open, has to be a discussion. And I think the more that we do not present it to our kids as America's kids, not my kids, your kids, is a real disservice. And I think we're only harming it, and we're not making the best decision for our kids. We don't educate them. Education's real, and we need to do it for them.
Let me bring, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, and the opportunity for us as parents to have the ability to teach our children what we want them to know. Because there's a lot of people, like I said, that aren't comfortable discussing this, and they're going to let school or whomever is in charge in that capacity be the ones to educate them. I want my kids to know, like, my feelings on this and my views, just like we teach our children, whatever religion we are, or political views, or whatever it is, and give them the opportunity as educated people, young people, children, whatever it is, to decide how they want to move it forward. And there's, and I know that's not the norm, and that's not how it's going to be across the board, because there's so many people. There's such, stigmatism on discussing education or discussing all of these things and just like Max said, they have access to everything. It is a couple clicks on the computer and they can ask any question, and who knows what answer they're going to get. That's something that we agree with.
Parents need to be involved. There's no question about it, because we've got to be able to understand what's being taught so we can be prepared when they come home and ask us the questions. And we need it to be taught, and that's my position. I think that it's crazy that there's so many people that's trying to stonewall sex education, because how many states across America actually teach sexual education in their school district? A lot fewer than you would think.
I found that fascinating. You're correct. Some of the research and some of the articles that you provided to the group, Mac, have indicated that you're right. It's not across the board, and it's quite variable on the level of education that kids are offered, and it's quite variable in who has any control. I mean, let's open it up to our production staff.
One other thing real quick. Last thing I want is my kid come home like they did with their math questions. They said, "Dad, will you help me with math?" I'll say, "Jesus, when they start adding letters in the math?" Right? So the same thing is, I don't want them coming to ask me a sex question. I want to be able to answer it. And I want to be able to answer it in the same way that they're being taught it. And hopefully they're in school that they are, so I can piggyback and say, you know what? Because last thing I want is friction between me and their educators. I want to be able to understand so we can be in harmony when we discuss it and give them the right answer. So yeah, as a parent, we all need to be involved. I think a lot of great parents out there are involved in their kids' education. I think some of those great parents are missing the boat on sexual health, and that's well documented.
And I think we're very enlightened individuals because of our backgrounds. And so I don't think we're the norm when it comes to be talking about sex.
Well,
I certainly hope we can stress people the importance of it.
I've certainly never been called enlightened. That's one. And two, I absolutely share the desire to have an understanding of the questions that my son asked growing up when he came home to ask about sex. That's why I limited him to questions about masturbation, so at least I would be an expert on it. But the other aspect is that I want to kill him with humor. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I wanted to open up to the rest of the group.
I was curious what your tools of your trade was, that's all.
I want to open it up to our production staff, and I think we all agree that sex education should be taught. I am not sure how the parents are going to have a real strong position in the curriculum, at least given I live in California, and that's a very, as one of my team members says, tough pickle to chew. I'm not sure how to even deal with this place politically. But I wanted to
define pickle.
Yes, thank you. I didn't want.
We're talking about sex education now again.
Yes, I want
a little gherkin or a little dill.
It doesn't matter. It's what you do with the pickle. What I want to do is open it up to Shelby.
We're gonna have a little education here after this.
I want to open up. You'll get your oral sex talk in. It's all right. But I want to open it up to our production staff, and when we talk about education, I believe that everyone here, including Tucker and Cody, believe that sex education at some level has to be addressed. Does that include abstinence? Would our students, would our kids, high school, college, even address abstinence as an option?
Great question.
Well, I spent a lot of time.
Does staff answer that, or is Pipes going to answer that one?
Well, I mean, I taught my children abstinence, and they didn't listen.
But define abstinence. I think we need to define abstinence. Abstinence is what? Not being physically involved, or not the conversation.
I think it's not abstinence. I think most kids define it as not being caught.
Okay, I like that. Yeah.
So that's actually a very good point. But abstinence, a lot of women of Middle Eastern descent who want to maintain their label of virginity will involve themselves or engage in anal or oral intercourse so they don't have hymenal penetration. And so I can't remember if it was the Middle Easterns or the Irish.
Somewhere in the world.
Somewhere. I get them confused.
Antarctica or something.
But yeah, that's a big deal. A lot of people don't think that oral sex is sex, and a lot of kids will
Bill Clinton didn't.
Thank you. And what did he do? He was like vice president for some of our younger listeners, right? But Shelby and Jose, is abstinence a thing? Is that an option to teach your kids? You've got kids on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think it is. I think we should be teaching, our kids. Well, when we talk about sex education in the, schools, I can only speak on Fresno Unified when we talk about that. From my point of view, anyways.
Most of our listeners think we're recording from Paris.
Oh,
but you just fucked that up. But good.
God,
all
I'm
right.
So sorry. Well,
Paris, Texas.
Yeah. No, I think parents do need to be involved. I think they need to, and I think it needs to be transparent on what their sex education course is going to be. So, parents have equipped answers when their children come home to them, or they need to be aware, and parents do need to get involved. Absolutely.
Jose, you've got two little baby girls. How do you, too young? I hope everyone agrees to address sexual issues right now. But is your game plan after you stop drinking, realizing you have two baby girls, to discuss abstinence as an option? And how do you sell that to somebody?
Well, first of all, one of my babies identifies as a boy.
Oh, he's a baby boy? I'm sorry.
Yes, it's a boy and a girl.
I'm not sorry. I get confused. It was I didn't take that course. All right. Never mind.
You don't remember when you circumcised them?
Oh my God, Jose, that was freaking brilliant. Brilliant response.
Yeah. I'm under a lot of pressure here. I do two podcasts. You guys are just doing one.
Yeah, but we do it with you, and that's quite taxing.
Yeah, sure. Of course, there's things that maybe we won't agree with, but that's why we complement whatever they teach at school.
And are you aware? Do you have an itinerary, or what do you call it? A guideline?
Curriculum?
A curriculum of what's actually taught?
Not yet, but I'm looking forward to get it.
And is that what happens with parents of younger kids? Is that actually published? My impression is that it isn't, and that up until the recent pandemic, when kids were homeschooled, we were absolutely clueless of what was going on in school. I was clueless, with a great communication with my son Joey in undergraduate school, the kind of courses that he needed to take, essentially apologizing for his whiteness and being a male. And this was in a business course. This had nothing to do with sociology, had nothing to do with psychology. It was a required class. And I was, after writing a check for his tuition, absolutely floored at the curriculum. And my understanding is...
Floored or furious?
One of those F words.
Were you upset about it? When you say floored, were you upset about it? Or were you like, really, this is what I'm paying for? What do you mean by floored?
I was amazed that this was going on. I wasn't furious because I know how fucked up people can be. I know how bad people can be. And I understand how disconnected people can be. It's not a judgment, it's an observation. Yeah. And so I was one of the other Fs. I wasn't furious. I don't get mad.
Okay. I was curious.
Yeah, bit shocked, I guess.
Some people are floored with enthusiasm.
I was not floored. I was not floored with enthusiasm. It was an observation of, wow, let's get out of this world. And Elon Musk and I, other than sharing the same body type when we have our shirts off, we have nothing else in common. So I don't anticipate going on his spacecraft or wherever the hell he's going to a different planet. So I got to deal with what we have. I hope that answers your question. But I I just don't. When Jose's saying he knows that he is a boy and a girl, but what he doesn't know is I don't think he knows that he has very little control of what's going on in public school curriculum. You know, and I think it's great. And both my wife Patty and I have thought of if we could turn back time and if we had a child of school age in 2022, we would be homeschooling. We absolutely would be homeschooling. My concern is that what he's going to ask his homeschool teacher about sex. So that sex education in a home is at that level when you're the teacher and the mom or the dad. Maybe that's the way it should be, actually, as I think about it out loud. I was trying to search for a joke because that's the core of my need for acceptance. But maybe that's what it really should be, is homeschooling on sex education. Maybe that is the bottom line.
Well, here in Seattle, they've in 22 years ago, they signed legislation that in school year 2022-23, sex education is a mandatory in the Seattle school system. I don't know if it's statewide or not. And so right now we've got a lot going back and forth what that curriculum should be. And I really believe this is a point in time where they need to go to the experts, not the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats. They need to go to the experts because our kids need answers. They don't need opinions. They don't need thoughts. They need answers. And I'm a believer. I've said it a couple times. But we all know, in our research for this topic, we understand that people who got sex education earlier in their adulthood or their lives before they became young adults seem to have better relationships out there because they understand what consent is. They understand what sex is. They understand a lot more well-roundedness around sexual health. And that's well documented. So, everything I read, it's imperative. And to the parents that may be listening here, you need to take control. You need to find out what's being taught. If not, then build your own curriculum to talk to your kids about it because they need to know to make them better, have better relationships if they become older, appreciate sex, understand sexuality, all that other stuff. So that would be my message. I hope that is heard to our audience, and that is be involved in your sexual health of your kids.
Well, it's certainly
education. Oh God, and education on any level with anything is power. Like when people have an understanding of whatever it is that they're have any interest in or that the path they're going down, like that's only helps our kids. The more they know, they don't have to agree with every outlook that we have on things. They don't have to be comfortable, having the same conversations. And because I can have different conversations with my two daughters who are 2 years apart, and they're very different conversations depending on their comfort level.
Yeah, and Holly could relate to this, or Shelby can relate to this. There's slanted media out there, right? Whether you're right or left wing or slanted media, you seem to have a tough time finding facts. Everybody wants to slant things. And I think this is where we can take control and not have it slanted. We can just, call spade a spade with our kids and everybody. But a point that Pipes brought up earlier is that our careers allowed us to be better understanding about sex and sexual health, our careers. And that career for me, it didn't start till 5, 6, 7 years after college. So it was I wish I knew all this about sexual health that we know today 40 years ago. I'd be a better person, a better companion if I knew. So I find it very important.
Well, really what we are doing, Mac and Pipes and our production crew, is with the Sexual Healing Podcast, we are actually continuing that curriculum. And that is really the bottom line. We started out with sex education at the entry level, if you will, and now we're trying to carry that on for young adults and maturing people. And it speaks to the fact that every aspect of our lives, our maturity, our health, our socioeconomic status, there are different levels of how we should define sexual health. And the one thing that I asked earlier is something that I want to answer myself right now, is that if I were to look at people in their 20s, and if I were to teach them what I know now so they could be so much further ahead when they become 42 like me and stand on our
And
shoulders,
69 like pipes.
or 69 like pipes, standing in a different way in a contorted bad back neck thing, that it is not that difficult. Good sex shouldn't be so mysterious. It should not be a black box of embarrassment or being paralyzed if we're confused or if we feel that we have made a mistake. There are no mistakes. We identify it and unfail ourselves and try again. And that's the beauty about sexual activity. It's very, very simple. It's something that we all enjoy, and we enjoy in different ways, whether it's partnered or unpartnered sex. And it's so gratifying for me to be here on this platform with you guys, because it makes sense. It makes sense. It's easy. It's easy to explain if people are listening and don't identify with guilt and don't identify the shitty, stupid things they were taught when they were younger, and make it happen. And there is no right answer for everyone. And there are people that are born a certain gender and are very happy being that way. There are people that are born white, black, Asian, Latin, and are very happy to be that way. And we embrace that. And all of you, listener, should embrace that as well. I thank you guys. I thank you for spending some time with us.
Bill, you mentioned the stigma, the negative stigma on sex or sex education. We need to replace that with the word wholesome, because sex is wholesome if you're engaged and you're properly educated with it. It could be very wholesome to your livelihood, your well-being, the way you carry yourself. It's connected so many ways.
I think this is a whole nother, this is a great segue into another full conversation for us to have that talks about the negative aspects of sex and then the positive. The negative and positives of porn, the negative and positives of having conversations, the negative and positives of experimentation, the negatives and positives of masturbation. There's so many things.
There's a negative to masturbation?
Pardon me?
There's a negative to masturbation?
You go blind.
Yeah, it's lost the hearing.
Yeah.
What did he say?
You should see, I have to shave the palms of my hands all the
I need
time.
an eye chart. But here's the deal. When you talk about sex being wholesome, the next thing that I remember is wholesome as milk. And I love that white mustache if things are done correctly. So it all full circle.
We can take that down so many pathways. We'll just let it go.
Thanks for listening, guys. Sexual Healing Podcast. I'm Dr. Bill. You've listened to Mac and Pipes, Shelby Jose. Thank you, security. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you all.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends.
Thank you for joining the show that never ends. We will pause with our part. However, you can reach us at sexualhealingpodcast.org. We are here to make your sexual health be everything you want it to be. We'll visit with you next week for another episode of Sexual Healing Podcast. Stay sexy out there.